That Tuesday didn't start out that bad, but it ended that way. When I woke up in the morning, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except that my wife Debbie was not in bed next to me. I usually get up a little earlier, because I start work at 8 and my wife doesn't start until 9:30. I finished my morning chores and headed downstairs to make coffee for my wife and I when I smelled the coffee already brewing. When I came downstairs, my wife, already dressed for work, was sitting at the corner breakfast table. She smiled at me and we wished each other good morning. While I was pouring myself some coffee, my wife said, "This morning, I will have to leave early for a meeting at work. I'll be free by 5 and be right back home so we can talk as soon as you get home." This caught me a little off guard, and I raised an eyebrow and asked, Oh, did I forget something? What do we need to talk about?" Debbie just waved her hand and said we'd talk about it later, that it was nothing that couldn't wait. With that, she stood up, put her cup in the sink, kissed me goodbye, and was out the door before I could respond. Before I dive into this story, I need to tell you a little about us. I'm Tim Johnson. My wife Debbie and I have been married for over 41 years. That's right, we got married right after finishing school when we were 18 years old. We have known each other since 2nd grade. We dated all through high school, and we both knew we were meant to be together for the rest of our lives. Neither of us had ever dated anyone else, so we learned about sex together and were the only sexual partners. Heck, I've never kissed another woman other than on the cheek as a greeting, and I guess it was the same with my wife. We attended the same college as a married couple, living in a cheap apartment and working part-time jobs to get by. I had a guy bill to help with school expenses, and her parents were helping her, so while it was a little difficult, it wasn't too harsh. We actually started our family while we were still in college. Our oldest child, Terry, is 37 years old and married with 2 children. She works as a family law attorney for an out-of-state firm. Our second, Darcy, is 35, single, and works in Washington as an assistant director at the Department of Agriculture. Our little Sydney is 34 years old and married to a police officer in our hometown. She is raising our 2 grandchildren and is a hard-working stay-at-home mum. We are very proud of all 3 of our girls. After high school, I went to work as a risk analyst for a large insurance corporation. Debbie became a high school teacher in the local school district and then worked part-time in the administrative office. At 59 years old, we are both in excellent physical shape. We have both always been very active. I play golf, swim, and go to the gym at least 3 times a week. However, my wife embarrasses me with her discipline in her workouts. She goes to the gym 5 days a week and runs long distances almost every day. I may be biased, but she is still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. She weighs the same as she weighed on our wedding day, not bad for 3 kids and 41 years of marriage. When we were young, she was so beautiful that when she walked into a room, even women would stop to stare at her. To this day, she attracts the attention of men half her age, but she always carries herself with dignity and class. Debbie and I talk about this all the time. Our family life is the embodiment of the American dream. We are so lucky to have found each other, and we thank our lucky stars every day for the lives we lead. Unlike most men, when they hear the words, "Honey, we need to talk," I don't feel horrified or break out in a cold sweat. I was curious, but after all, we talk all the time. We call them family discussions, and we've had them since before we had kids. It was our way of planning our lives, but she didn't say that we would have a family discussion. At work, I wasn't preoccupied with anxiety about the upcoming meeting, but I did daydream a little about the unforgettable lovemaking the night before. Debbie is a very lively and spontaneous lover. she doesn't hesitate to tell me what she wants and gets her way. She never fakes an orgasm because we discussed a long time ago that we should be honest with each other and strive to make our love life better, and faking an orgasm will not help with that. Debbie is not the type of lady who has series of small orgasms. When she crosses the line, she screams with incredible force. Her whole body shudders, her eyes roll back, and sometimes she loses consciousness for a few seconds. She doesn't even want to be touched for several minutes because her whole body is so sensitive. It's amazing to watch and be a part of. She constantly tells me that she will never cheat on me because it would take too long to prepare a new lover. After 41 years of marriage, we still make love 2 to 3 times a week. She often reminds me, like she did last night, that while my sexual performance may not be as strong as it was in my younger days, my skills with my lips, tongue and fingers have only improved over time. Overall, our love life has remained enjoyable, even into middle age. With my curiosity piqued, I left work a little early and headed home. I wanted to get home before Debbie so I could change my clothes, get comfortable with a glass of my favorite single malt whiskey, and find out what our conversation would be about. My curiosity turned to concern when I pulled into the garage and saw my wife's 7-year-old Camry already there. My anxiety increased when I saw her sitting at the table with a glass of wine in her hand, my scotch already poured and placed in my place. She looked very confused as she kept rubbing her knee with her free hand. It's been a nervous habit of hers ever since I've known her. I asked if I could change before we started. She answered, "No, I want to do it right now. Please have a seat." I didn't argue, because as I sat down, I was sure she was going to tell me she was sick. I felt my chest constrict and it became difficult to breathe normally. Looking into her eyes, I saw. She seemed nervous and her voice cracked as she spoke in a very low, deliberate tone. "Tim, there is something that I have been thinking about for quite some time, and I need to express it without interruption. Please let me finish before you speak, so you can understand how important this is to me." As she continued, she seemed to gain more and more confidence. "And I need you not to lose your temper and turn this into a baby cry. Can you do this for me, please?" I nodded my head slowly without saying a word. At least she wasn't going to tell me she was sick, but I suspected it would be much worse, and I was right. "Darling, you know that I love you more than life itself. Since my school years, I have loved only you. There was no one else in my life." My chest hurt more and more. It became more and more difficult to breathe, and my shoulder began to ache as she continued. "You and I will spend our old age together, rocking our great-grandchildren on our laps. We will travel the world together, but there is something I must do." The pain in my shoulder was now radiating into my left arm, and I was feeling dizzy. I couldn't catch my breath. "Tim, pay attention. This is very important." I just nodded, thinking that this couldn't be happening to me. "I've been thinking about this for months now, and there's something I need to do before I get too old." The room began to spin, and it seemed to me that someone was standing on my chest. "I'm going to date other men to understand what I've been missing all these years. This won't last forever, maybe 6 months, and I will become your loving wife again, proving to you every day how deep my love is for you." I started to say something, but nothing came out of my mouth, and then everything around me went dark. Light emerged from the darkness, trying to break through the haze. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids probably weighed 2 kilograms each. I struggled to open them and finally succeeded. Where have I been? What were those beeps? Why can't I move? What is my name? I must be in the hospital. What happened to me? All these thoughts ran through my head when I remembered that I was Tim Johnson and I was in the hospital because my wife tried to kill me. Why did she try to kill me? My brain worked a little better. I was sitting at the kitchen table. She was talking. Then I remembered the conversation. It wasn't really a conversation, but rather something she said to me. She said she was going to kill me. As the fog in my brain cleared, I noticed a nurse standing by my bed, looking at me and smiling. "Welcome back, Mr. Johnson. My name is Nurse Smith. You are at Mercy Hospital because you had a very serious heart attack a few days ago. It's called the Widowmaker, and you're lucky to be alive." It's funny, but I didn't feel lucky. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and the doctor will come later this morning to talk more about your condition. I tried to speak, but nothing came out because my throat was sore and dry. Don't try to talk, Mr. Johnson. You had a ventilator in your throat, so it will take a few days for it to heal on its own. Now I was thinking more clearly and made a writing motion with my hand. Nurse Smith handed me a pad and pen. I wrote it in big bold font. "No visitors." She answered, "Oh no, you had a lot of visitors. Your wife and daughters were here." She must have noticed how I flinched and fell silent. I furiously wrote, "I do not want any visitors." She seemed surprised, but asked, "Are you sure?" I simply nodded my head. I scribbled another note, "Do not share my medical information with anyone." Her eyebrows shot up, but she just nodded her head as I wrote another note. "Is there anyone here at the hospital who can help me fill out the Do Not Resuscitate form?" I'm sure I shocked Nurse Smith, but she kept her composure. "Your condition is not so serious," I interrupted her by furiously tapping my notepad. "I'll convey your wishes to the day shift." She patted me on the shoulder and quietly left the room. I decided that my life was over anyway, so if something happened, why let the medics resuscitate me? Based on my luck, I'll probably survive, but I'll turn into a vegetable, so screw it. Plus, it would be an added shock when my wife found out what I did and how much she hurt me. I couldn't fall back to sleep. That is, I had been sleeping for several days, so all I could do was lie there, think, and make plans. I said I was doing risk analysis for an insurance company, but in reality, my job was to help my company's clients perform risk analysis for their organizations. This was a service that my company offered and many clients used it. I did this for several years, was good at it, and was paid accordingly. In my experience, all companies are afraid of something, but my job was to make sure they were afraid of the right things and provide solutions to reduce those threats. There is a specific process for doing this kind of analysis, so I decided to apply the same strategy to solve my problem. I know my wife wasn't actually trying to kill me with her statement, but damn, she almost did it. The actions I just took will buy me time, and time is what I need to figure things out. Lying in bed and waiting for dawn, I began to analyze my situation. I am one of those strange people who, when I think, talk to myself, and this case was no exception. Okay, Tim, you've bought yourself some time. Now let's think about the real issues. There was nothing unusual in the fact that my wife spoke very directly and briefly. So she wasn't trying to shock me with her statements. It was just the way she approached everything her entire life. What she said, she's been thinking about it for months. Should I have noticed something? Changes in her behavior? Did she give me verbal hints that I missed? Maybe she has already cheated on me. I answered all these questions in the negative. Debbie is not flighty and doesn't tend to act at random. She acts deliberately, but once she formulates a plan of action, she does not hesitate or chat in vain, but goes ahead. Another very important fact, she didn't say she wanted to date other guys, she said she was going to date other guys. So Tim, you have a real problem that most likely won't go away because she put you in the hospital. Crap! So Tim, here are the scenarios I see. 1. You can just let her date guys and hope that sooner or later she'll get it out of her head and we can go back to the way things were. Secondly, You can try to talk her out of it, because honestly, I can't imagine myself being a husband who shares his wife. Third, just divorce her and be done with it. Or fourth, you can just die and not worry about it. Honestly, the fourth option doesn't look that bad right now. I still feel like crap. Obviously, I was wrong. I was able to fall asleep because the next moment daylight streamed through the window and the clock on the wall showed 10:40. Shortly after I woke up, the doctor came in and explained that a widowmaker heart attack was caused by a complete blockage of the left anterior descending artery of the heart. He said that I was very lucky because with this type of heart attack, the survival rate is very low. If my wife had not been with me and called 911, I would have died. Okay, he was the second person to tell me how lucky I was, but I still didn't feel it. I asked him if extreme stress could cause an attack like this. He replied, "Well, yes, strong emotional trauma can provoke it, but the heart problems should have existed for a long time. It is caused by a combination of genetics and high cholesterol? Why are you asking?" I explained as best I could what happened between me and my wife. He said, "Well, that explains your request for a ban on visits and a DNR. Mr. Johnson, you will remain here for a few more days, but you will need a lot of rest and quiet during the recovery period, which will take some time. We were able to place a stent instead of a bypass, so this will shorten your recovery time. I can't help you with your personal problems, but I strongly recommend that you see a psychologist to help you solve your problems as you get on the road to recovery." Believe it or not, one of the most common side effects of a heart attack like this is depression, and with your relationship problems, I think you're at risk. With these words, he left the room. I don't blame him. Doctors usually don't like talking to patients. Just give them pills, or operate on them and then leave. Then another doctor told me she was a hospitalist and listed all the medications I would need over the next year or so. It was a damn pharmacy list. Yes, Solution 4 was looking better and better. Shortly after the hospitalist left, I heard a noise in the hallway. The commotion was caused by my wife being told she couldn't see me. Having created a whole scene, she asked about my condition. I had to call security to have her forcibly removed when she was told that I specifically asked not to tell her about my condition. For the first time since she hit me with her plans, I felt a little better. It's childish, I know, but it was still a small victory. Apparently, the doctor, having learned about my situation, prescribed me a sedative. Either that's true, or I'm so tired that I slept for more than a day. When I woke up again, it was already late at night and Nurse Smith was standing by my bed. "I'm glad to see you awake," she said, trying to cheer me up. "Could you try to say something for me?" I was able to speak, although with a slight hoarseness, but thank God, at least I could speak. She asked if we could talk, and I nodded my head yes, but only if she called me Tim. She laughed and said it was okay and that I should call her Beth. She started the conversation by saying that she was aware of my situation and understood why I had a no visitors rule, but was still concerned about the do not resuscitate request. I told her to forget about the do not resuscitate, that I didn't really want to die, and that I knew that sooner or later I would have to talk to my wife. But I, of course, did not want to do this until I was well enough. Beth then told me she understood, but she had to kick my wife and all 3 girls out of the room shortly before I woke up. She told me what I already knew, that at some point I would have to talk to my wife, but given the circumstances, maybe I could talk to my daughters. At that moment it hit me. How much, if anything, do my daughters know about what their mother told me? The girls were very close to their mother, and maybe they knew in advance what she was going to say. Probably not, but Debbie was especially close to Darcy. Even though she was in Washington, they talked on the phone almost every day, so maybe Darcy was aware. Maybe Debbie told the girls the truth after what happened to me? In any case, I agreed with Beth that I should talk to the girls, especially since the older ones had traveled great distances to be near me. Beth said she would contact them and ask them to come back to talk to me, but only one at a time. I told her in no uncertain terms that I was not going to talk to my wife, and she understood. I found it interesting that the girls were back in my room within 5 minutes. Apparently, Beth only kicked them out to the waiting room. I was sure everything was already decided, but I wanted to see my girls, so what the hell? I talked to each of my daughters that evening, but I told them I didn't want to talk about their mother. I wanted them to know how glad I was to see them, and that I loved them very much. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I became very emotional when I finally realized how close I was to never seeing them again. Sydney let it slip in the conversation that Debbie told all three of them that she blamed herself for what happened to me, but without specifics. I didn't argue with Sydney, and I know she found it interesting. She also mentioned that Debbie promised to meet them tomorrow and explain everything. Terry and Darcy told me they would be taking a long vacation to help me recover. I was overcome with emotion, and Beth had to cut the visit short. After meeting my daughters, I realized that no matter what happened to Debbie, life would go on. My life will become more difficult, but it will not end. I just needed to decide what to do with my relationship with my wife. Was there even any point in talking to her about this? Even if she cancels her dating plans, will I still be able to live with her? I needed to answer this question before talking to her. Maybe the girls will help me with a solution. If Sydney was right, Debbie should have told them what triggered my heart attack so that their opinion could help me. Cheating doesn't just affect a couple's relationship, it affects the entire family. A very interesting development was that my wife and daughters decided that, after leaving the hospital, I would stay in our house and my wife would move in with Sydney's family in their guest room. Terry and Darcy will alternate, providing the care I need for several weeks. The doctors were confident that I would return to normal life in 5 to 6 weeks. I was happy with everything, but it seemed very strange to me that during the first 2 weeks that I was at home, my wife did not make a single attempt to contact me. There wasn't even a text message. Perhaps the girls read her the riot act and told her to back off, or maybe she used this opportunity to go on dates. I just didn't know, but I didn't want to engage in direct confrontation. I decided to talk to Darcy first, as she had always been close to her mother, and could perhaps give me some insight into my wife's state of mind. Darcy and I met alone in the house, and she knew in advance that I wanted to talk to her about this incident. I, like my wife, am a fairly straightforward person, so as soon as Darcy walked into the room, I immediately blurted out, "Darcy, how long have you known about your mother's desire to date other men?" "We talked about this a little," she muttered, not looking me in the eye. "How long ago, Darcy?" I growled. "Sorry, Dad. About 3 to 4 months. My blood pressure was rising, and I was already losing control of myself. This was not good. I needed to calm down." "Sorry, Darcy. I didn't mean to yell at you. I really need your opinion. This hit me very hard. I had no idea that your mother was unhappy with our relationship. This literally breaks my heart." I tried to calm myself down a little. "Dad, she loves you very much, and it doesn't mean anything. She just wants to experience something before she gets too old. This shouldn't affect your relationship at all." "Do you really believe this nonsense? I mean, Darcy, how can her sex with other men mean nothing to me? I'm shocked that you can say that." "So you think I should let her have sex with other men so she can experience more in her life, and then come back to me like nothing happened?" "Well, maybe not as if nothing had happened, but your love for her must be strong enough to survive it. She has dedicated her entire life to you and to all of us, and she just wants it for herself. Dad, you're 59 years old, and you've probably slowed down a bit. It's normal that Mom wants to meet younger men. This is a natural desire for a woman." That was a shock. I assumed Debbie didn't want to date older men, but hearing my daughter say it shocked me. It was all about sex. While I may have slowed down, I thought I was still doing pretty well, but it looks like I was wrong. Shouldn't her love for me be so strong that she doesn't need to date other men for satisfaction? So what if I slowed down? Is this a reason for her to cheat on me? Don't be stupid, Dad. It wouldn't be cheating if you knew about it. That's why she tried to talk to you about it. We walked around for about another 5 to 10 minutes, but we didn't come to anything. Darcy expressed her opinion on this matter with complete certainty. I needed to end this conversation before I exploded. Darcy asked in an almost childish voice, "What are you going to do, Dad?" "I don't know, Darcy. I just don't know. But I just can't live with the fact that your mother sleeps with other men. I'm just not cut out for this." I was well aware that Debbie would quickly learn the details of our conversation. We hugged and said goodbye. I thought to myself that I hoped Darcy never got married, or at least told her fiancé about her beliefs beforehand. My conversation with Terry was just the opposite. She entered the room, all excited, and spat out, "I can't believe this bitch is doing this to us." "Hey there," I said, raising my hand to her face. "It's your mother you're talking about, and she's not doing this to us. She does this to me." "Understand, Dad, when someone in the family cheats, it affects all of us. So yes, she is cheating on her family." Teddy, you said cheating, but didn't you mean she's going to cheat?" "You really don't know, do you, Dad? She's been seeing men since you went to the hospital." "I think she was doing this even before you had your heart attack." "I don't think she slept with any of them yet, but she's definitely bugging them." I suspected that after this revelation, my relationship with Darcy was practically over. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if Debbie was dating. It was strange. I kept waiting for another heart attack or at least a stroke, but it didn't happen. I only felt sadness because at that moment I realized that my marriage was over. To be honest, I wasn't surprised Debbie did that. She has always been strong, but why did she call an ambulance when I had a heart attack? There was no point to it, except that in her own quirky way, she at least liked me. All I could do was shake my head. I wondered again, is there really any reason to sit down and talk to her? Terry and I talked for some more time, mainly about divorce laws in our state. In a no-fault state, it wasn't all that difficult. All assets are split 50-50. Terry said I might consider a legal separation if I wasn't sure about divorcing Debbie. I told her I would consider it, but I didn't think it would make any difference. Terry also told me that, while my wife couldn't stop the divorce, she could delay it. This caught my attention, and I decided to seek legal help as soon as possible. Terry said she would send me some lawyer recommendations the next day. My conversation with Sydney consisted of me trying to console her because she couldn't stop crying. She demanded that I let Debbie come home. I reminded her that I didn't send her away. She can come home anytime. The house belonged to her as much as it belonged to me. I asked her a couple of pointed questions. "Sydney, did your mom go on dates after I was in the hospital?" Even though I already knew the answer, I wanted confirmation. Sydney just nodded her head and continued crying. "How often, Sid?" Through tears, she stammered. "Almost every evening, Dad." I tried to talk to her about this. "I told her she was cheating on you, and she said she wasn't because she wasn't sleeping with any of them. And besides, she told you what she was going to do." All I could do was shake my head in disbelief. Before Sydney left, I called her mother and told her that I was feeling better and that she could come back to her house anytime she wanted. At the same time, I emphasized that, in my opinion, she should do this as soon as possible, because Sydney would have a nervous breakdown if she did not leave her house. I hung up while she was saying something, but I didn't care what she said. I was ready for our meeting. Sydney told me that my wife would be home at 1 p.m. the next day, so I spent the rest of the day preparing my notes. When going into battle, it is very important to have good plan, carefully tested and practiced. And I was ready to fight. Of course, with the first shot, the plan goes out the window, and that's exactly what happened to me. When Debbie returned home for our meeting, she didn't just walk through the front door, she burst through it, screaming, "Where are you?" My eyes were already widened when she saw me sitting at the table with notes neatly laid out in front of me. Without waiting for any comments from me, she, breathing fire, continued her tirade. There will be no damn divorce. As I already mentioned, my wife was a school teacher, and history was her favorite subject. She was especially knowledgeable about the American Civil War. It was obvious to me that she was using the strategy of Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain of the U.S. 20th Maine at Little Round Top on the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Circumstances were such that Chamberlain's 20th Maine was on the extreme left flank of the Union Army and was the only regiment standing between Lee's Confederate Army and Washington. The fighting was brutal. Chamberlain's men were exhausted and almost out of ammunition. Their losses were extremely high, and it seemed that all was lost. Then Chamberlain, a rather inconspicuous college professor of rhetoric in civilian life, did something no one expected. He ordered his remaining troops to attack. They did so, and the Union was essentially saved. This is exactly what my wife did to me. She attacked when she should have been defending herself, and I was completely stunned. The next thing I know is that I'm lying on our bed on my back, naked, and Debbie is impaling herself on my D, with her hands on my chest, while screaming something barely intelligible about how there will be no divorce. We love each other and will be together forever. Her breasts were bouncing from side to side and shaking wildly, not allowing me to concentrate. I thought she was trying to finish the job she started a few weeks ago when she gave me a heart attack. Much later, having completely exhausted me, she began to get dressed and said that she would return tomorrow with things from Sydney's house and that we would move on with our lives. As she walked out the door of our bedroom, I said quietly, "Debbie, thank you for calling the ambulance." She nodded and said irritably, "It's because I love you, fool, and we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. Now get some rest because we have to make up for lost time," and went to the door. "Debbie, there's one more thing." I managed to say it with all the authority I could muster. "The first time you have sex with someone else, our marriage will be over." Choking with excitement, she spat out, "Then we'll see." Apparently, she was a John Wayne fan too. For a month or two, our lives went back to normal, although it was a new normal because she was still going on dates. We didn't say another word to each other about my threat of divorce. She never told me she was going on a date, but once or twice a week she would just say she was going out and would be home late. On such evenings, she usually returned home around midnight. She never smelled of sex, although sometimes she looked a little disheveled. She would shower, get into bed, and then resume her attempts to kill me with sex. I just accepted it and decided that if I had to die, this would be a great way. I knew she hadn't had sex with anyone yet just because I knew. And then one evening, she returned home even later than usual. I sat in bed and read. I could never sleep when she wasn't home. It wasn't that I was worried about her. I was just waiting for the inevitable. I heard the garage door go up as she pulled her car in. Her heels clicked on the tile kitchen floor and the stairs creaked as she climbed. When she walked into the bedroom, we made eye contact, and I knew right away. It was obvious that she understood that I understood. She broke eye contact and walked into the master bathroom as she spoke. "This means nothing. This is beyond us and will end in a few months. No need for further discussion," and she closed the door behind her. When I heard the shower turn on, I stood up and went to the guest room. Not only did I lock the door, but I also moved the chest of drawers next to it. I wasn't going to make the same mistake I made at Little Round Top. Somehow, I knew she wouldn't chase me. It wasn't like her. In her opinion, when I deal with my little irritation, everything will go as usual, and I was right. I never heard a peep from her for the rest of the night. For my part, I didn't sleep at all. I had tears in my eyes, mourning the death of my marriage, and my mind was busy planning. For the next couple of weeks, we looked more like roommates than a married couple. We were polite to each other, but just went about our daily routines and responsibilities. I know she went out a few more times, but I didn't know what she was doing. I moved completely into the guest room and was usually asleep when she came home. Yes, I really was asleep. I found that as my plans progressed, I became increasingly calm and confident that I had chosen the right path. I never went through a period of woe, is me hand-wringing. I didn't question what I could have done better. I didn't blame myself for not being a more attentive husband. I refused to apologize or take responsibility for not being aware of all the emotions my wife might be feeling. In my understanding, marriage is a contract. She broke the contract, not me. She never discussed problems or disappointments with me. She just told me what she was going to do. But the funny thing is that part of me understood why she wanted to experience more. This is a natural human emotion. She simply didn't give us a chance to find an alternative. She made a unilateral decision that effectively ended us. End of story. I also understood why she made the decision unilaterally. In the Western world, almost 100% of marriages are dominated by the woman to some degree. Ours was no exception. I guess if I could find any fault in this mess, it would be that I was too accommodating. But in more than 50 years of our life together, there was nothing that could make her understand that I would accept her behavior. I let her make most of the decisions regarding our home life because it made her happy, and that was what was most important to her. In fact, before we got married, we had a long discussion about our expectations of fidelity. There were no grey areas, and certainly no gaps. I've never come close to cheating. I've never done anything that didn't pass the fidelity test, and I expected Debbie to do the same. She did this to us, not me. A couple of weeks after Debbie cheated on me for the first time, I was ready for it. One evening, after she left, I sat at the kitchen table, where we held most family gatherings, waiting for her to return. When she returned, I said quietly, "Debbie, we need to talk." "Not now," she replied dismissively. "I need to take a shower and get some sleep. We can talk in the morning." "No," I answered, with an authority she had never heard from me before. "We'll talk right now. Please sit down." She was clearly angry with me and irritably sat down in the chair opposite mine. Her nervousness was obvious and was probably due to the scent of her lover emanating from her, but I didn't care. I handed her a manila envelope across the table and said clearly, "These are divorce papers. I submitted them due to irreconcilable differences." At that moment, she began to say something, and I raised my hand in front of her face. "No, just sit here. A few months ago, you told me to sit and listen to you without interrupting, and I expect you to do the same until I'm done." She leaned back, rolled her eyes, crossed her arms, and stared at me. "These documents explain everything," I said. "There is a card from my lawyer in the envelope. You can sign them and return them to his office. If you don't do this within 3 days, I will have no choice but to serve you at work. I don't want to embarrass you publicly, but honestly, I wouldn't mind doing it where most of your lovers are." Do not worry. I didn't follow you. I have no photographs, audio, or video recordings of your infidelities. None of this matters to me. I continued. Everything is very simple. In a no-fault state, everything is divided in half. Our children have grown up and live independently. The house is paid for. We pay off our total credit card debt and move on with our lives. Are you finished? She asked in the most condescending tone. I simply nodded my head. Standing up, she declared, Okay, we're not getting a divorce. I'm tired and going to bed. Good night. The next morning, she wanted to talk. Interestingly, for the first time in a long time, she prepared a good breakfast for us. She looked quite cheerful as she pottered around the kitchen. When breakfast was ready, and I picked my jaw up from the floor, she calmly sat down and motioned with her hand for me to do the same. It was becoming surreal. I didn't sit down, said I'd eat out, and walked out the door. She didn't know that I was heading to an apartment I'd rented not far from work, and that I had no intention of ever setting foot in that house again except to pick up my things when the divorce was finalized. I thought I heard her crying softly as I got into the car, but I couldn't be sure. At this point, I had no intention of continuing the conversation. My direction was clear. She never had any contact with me except through her lawyer, and I did the same. She, of course, did not sign the papers, and I asked to officially serve her at work, as I said. She found herself a lawyer and began to do everything possible to disrupt the divorce process. No amount of persuasion on my part, or on the part of our daughters, influenced her actions. But in the end, there was nothing she could do to stop the divorce, and after 6 months, we were finally in family court with our lawyers. To be honest, I didn't really pay much attention to what was being said. I just wanted it to be over. My lawyer told me that this was the only formal meeting I had to attend, and I was grateful. But when the judge spoke directly to my wife, I sat up and focused my attention. Mrs. Johnson, why don't you want me to grant this petition for divorce as written? Everything looks like a fair distribution of wealth. My wife responded, standing in front of the judge, dressed as if she was going to church. Your Honor, several months ago, I made a terrible decision that destroyed our 41-year marriage. At the time, I was going through menopause and had trouble thinking clearly. I felt old and unattractive. Several young men at work flirted with me and showered me with praise and attention. The sad thing is that I ridiculously thought that my husband would understand and allow me to have a few months of harmless flings. I was stunned when she continued. He knew I'd been seeing other men for months, and I figured he wouldn't mind. Now I understand that I was wrong. I stopped dating anyone when he filed me divorce papers. I actually went to see a therapist several times a week, and she helped me realize how wrong my actions were. I know I can't stop him if he insists on divorce, but I was hoping you could set us up for couples counseling to try to repair our marriage. We've been together for over 50 years, and I feel like the least my husband could do is agree to go to therapy together before walking away from our marriage. As Debbie sat down, she looked at me with a sly grin on her face. I was sure that the judge would definitely ask Debbie to marry him. He liked her speech so much. This was not good at all. I looked pleadingly at my lawyer to do something when I heard the judge address me. Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, are you paying attention? I asked you, what do you think about what your wife said? She made very convincing arguments. Surely your 50-year relationship is worth trying to save? Oh crap, I said to myself. This can't happen to me. My wife could hardly contain her glee. My lawyer was scribbling something on his notepad. Looks like he was drawing a big Phillips head screw. I'm completely screwed. But then an epiphany came to me. I was back in the fight, and the first shot had already been fired. I answered, Your Honor, may I take a moment to process what my wife said? She really gave me something to think about. I'd like to talk to my lawyer. The judge answered rather good-naturedly. Of course, I think it's reasonable. Everyone in the courtroom felt like they were witnessing a true Hallmark moment. I quickly turned to my lawyer, who had by this time finished screwing in the Phillips head screw. What happens if I withdraw my divorce petition right now? Will he still be able to schedule a consultation? My lawyer, who looked like Clarence Darrow, turned and said, No, he can't. The court will no longer have jurisdiction in this matter. One more question, Clarence. Who? It doesn't matter now. What would happen if I just disappeared? My wife would have to serve me to get a divorce, right? Yes, but in reality it's not so simple. In a year she may get a divorce due to the fact that she was abandoned, he answered. Only if luck smiles on me, I said thoughtfully, and sighed heavily. Is there a law that says I have to live with my wife? My thoughts are racing now. No, it doesn't exist, he answered in the manner of a lawyer. Then a light bulb went on in his head, and he asked, Will I still get paid? Of course, Clarence, of course. I smiled broadly, straightened my tie, wiped my hands to smooth my trousers, and stood up to address the court. Everyone wanted it to end like a Hallmark movie, and I was going to give it to them. Well, sort of. Your Honor, in light of the fact that my wife has spoken in the most convincing manner, I immediately withdraw my petition for divorce. There was real bedlam in the courtroom. Although no, there were only about 12 people there, and it was lunchtime, so those who were not involved in the process got up to go to the cafeteria. The judge slammed his gavel, granting my request, smiling widely and with tears in his eyes. My wife and her lawyer themselves cried with happiness. I was furious, but I put on what I hoped was a happy face and walked straight out of the courtroom. I walked to my car with my wife following me, muttering something about how happy we were. I started the car and left it in the parking lot, wondering what just happened. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I threw my phone into the bushes and drove straight to work, where I immediately went to HR and retired. I realized I could rely on my $401,000 since I turned 59 and a half years old. I won't be able to get Social Security for a few more years, but with my 401 and our other assets, I knew I could do it. From work, I went to our bank. I did all the things people do right away when they get divorced. Our house was paid off and cost almost $1 million. Everything else we had was roughly equal to that value, so I was going to take it all, put it in just my name, and put the house under Debbie's name. My family didn't know where I lived and only contacted me through work or phone calls, so I had time to complete my plan without any hindrance. 2 weeks later, having made an appointment with Debbie, I drove up to our house, now probably my wife's house, in my brand new 11.5 meter Class A Georgetown motorhome. My new Jeep Wrangler 4x4 was hooked up to the tow hook behind it and ready to go. I knocked on the door and heard Debbie approaching from inside. All 3 of our daughters were there too, because I warned them about my arrival. I knew there would be trouble, and I wanted them to look after Debbie. Honey, you're home. Thank God we were so worried about you. The girls had already looked at the mobile home and were smart enough to suspect something was wrong. Darling, I actually stopped by to say goodbye. What does it mean to say goodbye? We will always be together, won't we? We have always been together, dear. I'm just going away for a while. But Tim, what about work? I'm retired, Deb, and I'm going to spend some time traveling around the country. But honey, I can't leave the school district so quickly because school has started. I know traveling around the country in an RV is our dream, but right now I just can't do it. She still didn't understand, but my daughters understood, and they were stunned. They were already burning holes in me with their looks because they knew I was going to leave them to deal with my promiscuous, stupid wife, and they weren't happy. We need to go inside and talk, Debbie. I want to tell you a lot, and I will give you the opportunity to speak out too. We all went into the kitchen and sat down at the table. It took my breath away, thinking about all the family gatherings we had around that table. The thought that this meeting would be the last was almost unbearable for me, but I've been thinking a lot about my situation over the past couple of weeks. There is not a drop of anger left in me. I was no longer nervous, afraid, or insecure. I felt calmer than I had in years, so I started the meeting. First of all, I want to apologize to you, Debbie, and to you girls, for the way I behaved when you first told me about your plans to sleep with other men. I know that in the hospital I behaved like a child. I raised my hand before Debbie could say a word. Please let me finish. I know the heart attack wasn't because of you. In twisted circumstances, you may have actually saved my life. The heart attack was bound to happen at some point anyway, and thanks to you being there and calling for help right away, I am alive and here today. The doctors assured me of this, so thank you. This really confused her. I've been thinking a lot since our trial, and I realized something, Debbie. Neither you nor I have ever been on our own. We've been together since elementary school. I think I now understand how you felt when you told me what you were going to do. I focused on the sexual aspect of your desire, although I think what you were really saying was that you wanted to be alone. You wanted to stand up and take your life into your own hands. Then I realized that I was in the same position as you. Our whole life, all our plans were made together, and now I also want to live alone. I think we both need some time apart to figure out who we are as individuals. At this point, I let her speak because it would be impossible to stop her. But I don't want to be alone. I will never give you a divorce. We will be together until the end of our days. I screwed up so much when I told you all this. How she managed to say this through tears and sniffling, I don't know. She looked like she was about to hyperventilate. The girls, despite the tears in their eyes, remained surprisingly calm and quiet. Deb, I accept that you will never give me a divorce, and I don't want to get a divorce anymore. For me, it doesn't make any difference. But we won't live together anymore. I need to understand who I am outside of us. I handed her a document on the right to inheritance across the table. I give you the house and take most of our other assets, and in the end, it's 50-50. The girls were now crying openly because they understood. Tim, honey, don't do this. I can make it up to you. I know that in time you will be able to forgive me. I haven't dated anyone for months. My therapist helped me realize how stupid I was. Please don't do this. You said you'd be back. I've already forgiven you. Deb, maybe someday I'll return. I release you from our wedding vows. I want you to experience everything you want in life without any guilt. I just can't be here while you're doing this. But how can I contact you if I need to talk? You can't leave me like this. It's not fair. She lowered her head to the table, sobbing hysterically, unable to speak further. I turned to my daughters. Girls, I'm very sorry that everything turned out this way. I will always love you, and please take care of your mother for my sake. If you need to contact me, you can email me. I don't have a phone number or mailing address because I don't plan to stay in one place for long. They were all hysterical when I stood up and walked out the door. I got into my mobile home and, without looking back, set off for a new life.